If you're an IE600 owner and you've been anxiously waiting for months to see if indeed the IE200 will be replacing it, well, I'm here to say you can unclench your butt cheeks now. Hello and thank you again for clicking on this video where I'll be sharing my experience with the Sennheiser IE200. Once again, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Sennheiser for lending this sample unit for me to make this video. Rest assured they will have no influence over my feedback and I will be returning this back to them after my video. But before I talk about them, I'd just like to say if you've been enjoying my content, please do consider hitting that like and subscribe button, and I have a Patreon account as well if you'd like to consider supporting me and the channel. All of your support is very much appreciated. Without further ado, let's talk about accessories. And as you get lower in the numbers for the IE series, the accessories get lesser as well. For the IE200, you've got interchangeable ear tips, both in the classic silicone and Sennheiser's own foam tips, the cable, and a carrying pouch with a magnetic clasp instead of a case, and that's it. And to be honest, I'm a little underwhelmed overall as we're getting about the same, if not more, from other competitors and for a much cheaper price. But it is not as underwhelming as the cable itself. While it looked good from afar with that braiding pattern, and even though it feels light, it also feels really flimsy and on the cheaper side too. Even the chin slider is a simple plastic tubing. It's also unfortunate that it's very difficult to find a third-party cable to replace these cables due to how they've designed their connectors to be a certain kind of fit. So if you have the IE300 or 600 lying around, you can try using those cables instead because they're just that much better. For the design, it's the exact same shape as the IE300, 600 and 900, and the design is just a simple plastic matte black IEM. No fuss, and if you've been wanting just a plain looking IEM from Sennheiser's IE lineup, it doesn't get any more plain than this. For fit and comfort, if you've worn any of the IE300, 600 or 900, you're getting about the same experience in terms of fit and comfort, if not a little lighter due to the plastic material used. But essentially it's light, it's comfortable, I could wear them for hours no problem, and this is one of Sennheiser's trademark in terms of their IE lineup. Before we get to the sound, the IE200 has a feature in which you can pull the ear tips halfway outwards, which allows a bass leak, which I believe has something to do with this hole in the shell, and this brings down the bass a little bit, which for me is not something I'll ever use. And also this feels more like a gimmick as the success rate of getting it to this mode is about 50-50. If you pull too hard, the entire ear tips come off entirely, and if you push it in with enough pressure, then you're back to the original setting. And I was able to replicate it with other ear tips like the SpinFit CP100 on the large, but the changes isn't as obvious. There's just too many variables for the second setting, so I'll simply be describing the sound based on the original setting. For the bass, this is an interesting experience because I'm hearing full rounded bass, but they sound like they're a step away from you. Best analogy I could come up with to describe this feeling is like someone bouncing a basketball right next to you compared to 2 steps away from you. It's not impactful, it doesn't rumble as deep, and ultimately the bass is relatively tame in terms of slam and impact. But it isn't flat. There's a certain fullness to the bass note and it accompanies your track, but I do wish it was a little bit more forward and impactful. But I feel the next aspect contributes to this sound presentation as well. For the mid-range, it is slightly recessed sound presentation overall. Vocals are about on the same plane as the instruments, if not just a step forward, but the overall presentation sounds further away from you. So it's good in terms of presenting an illusion of a wider soundstage, which I'll describe more later. But if you're hoping to get that vocal intimacy or highlight, unfortunately this IEM is not the one to do that. It's also lacking in that note weight, that fullness in the vocals for me personally. For treble, the infamous Sennheiser treble is not present in the IE200. It is smooth. I'm not getting any harshness or sibilance of any kind. This is great for treble sensitive people, however it does has its drawbacks because the treble extension is what I feel is also lacking, which compromises the note clarity of one of my favorite instruments, the trumpets. That airy, slightly sharp sound of the trumpet is not here, and the way the treble is tuned also compromises on the detail a little bit, which I'll explain more in the next portion of the video. If you had it on setting 2, then of course more of the mid-range and treble clarity can be heard, because of course there's not a lot of bass to cover that up, but that's only if you manage to get it to setting 2 without any hiccups, but we're not talking night and day difference here. For imaging, separation, soundstage, the slightly recessed sound presentation as mentioned earlier gives you the illusion of a wider soundstage, but due to how the bass and treble is presented, it doesn't give it a lot of depth. So if you want to imagine this, just imagine a single straight line of instruments and the singer is in front of that line. That's what you get. The imaging between left and right is good, but there's not a lot of separation between the sounds, so details are not as distinct and they all sound blended together, which ultimately lends itself to a smoother, laid-back sound presentation. And I know I've used that term for the HD660S2 headphone, but the differences are worlds apart. Versus the IE600. Let's get this out of the way. The IE200 for me personally doesn't even come close to the Sennheiser IE600. That IEM stays where it is, and the IE200 has a very different sound presentation to that IEM as well. Just talking about it very briefly, the IE600 has got more bass, a lot more treble to the point where it borderlines on being harsh, but for me personally it never crosses there, but I would put a caution for treble sensitive people. It's a lot more forward, and due to all that, it presents a clearer, fuller, sharper sound presentation. If you've tried the IE600 and it has characteristics that could be a little bit too much for you and you're looking for a safer, more relaxed sound presentation, then the IE200 could be the IEM for you. For source, on my HiFiMan EF400 I get to about 9 o'clock on the dial, and on my phone I still have about 10 to 20% volume left to spare. So putting this all to a close, things move pretty fast in the IEM world. Companies, especially from the chi-fi scene, are producing plenty of IEMs that are much more affordable, and they offer sound presentations that are very appealing to the masses. And what Sennheiser is bringing to the table to compete in this price category with the IE200, for me personally, the IE200 presents a very smooth and relaxing sound presentation, and it could be a great introduction to the world of audiophiles. However, at the same time, the sound is a little too safe for my own personal preference. It's not something that makes me want to jump out of my seat and scream at the top of my lungs to get this IEM, and for $150 US, which is 240 Australian dollars, I think it's just a little overpriced for what they're trying to offer. If this was at a discount and if you're looking for something smooth and relaxing from a reputable brand, then maybe this could be something you can consider, but that's something to think about in the future. However, this is just based on one man's experience, and I'm curious to know yours as well. Do you own the IE200 and do you enjoy the sound, or what's your favorite IEM at $150? Comment below, let me know, and once again I'd like to thank Sennheiser for this opportunity, and until the next experience, take care and happy listening.